All right, let's get started. So hello and welcome to our webinar. This is our Terrain Pro webinar where we're going to be showcasing the latest PlantPredict Pro tool, Terrain Pro. Terrain Pro is a major innovation in the preliminary analysis of utility scale solar power plants, allowing for earthwork assessments to be done early and often to reduce risk and keep your stakeholders better informed. We'll be giving you a deep dive into Terrain Pro so that you will have all the information you need to try it out for yourself. But the first thing we want to do is introduce our presenters. So we'll begin with my co-presenter, Jason Spokes. Jason, you want to turn your camera on and tell our audience a little bit about yourself?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Thanks, David. And thanks, everyone, for being on the call here today. I'm Jason Spokes, Senior Director of Project Engineering at Terabase. I've been in the electric power industry for over 20 years and in the large-scale solar industry since 2010. I've been with Terabase now for 3 years, where I support our consulting projects as well as our pre-construction software products. My background is in electrical engineering, so today you'll get to see a non-civil engineer demo grading software, which should be amusing. But in all seriousness, I just want to mention that, many of us in the solar profession wear multiple hats, especially in the early stages of project development, which is why we built Terrain Pro to be intuitive and easy to use, and hopefully that fact comes across in today's demo. David, back to you.
Thank you, Jason. And I'm David Spieldenner, the Product Director of PlantPredict. I've been working in the solar industry for 17 years now. 15 of those years were with First Solar, where I ran the IT team for the EPC division of First Solar. When First Solar started winding down their EPC division, I pivoted my career and became the product manager of PlantPredict. And I launched the PlantPredict Premium launch, and then got acquired by Terabase in 2021 as part of that acquisition, and have been focusing on growing the PlantPredict product suite ever since as a member of the Terabase Energy team. So speaking of Terabase Energy, I'll go ahead and go to the next slide, and I'm going to turn my camera off. Terabase Energy is a Berkeley, California startup founded in 2019. We're focused on building both digital and physical solutions to help accelerate the deployment of solar. And that's what you see on the screen here. First, on the left, we have our software and services for the development and pre-construction phases of the project. Central to this is PlantPredict, our solar energy modeling engine. We've been expanding PlantPredict into a full suite of professional design tools, including layout automation, material estimation, economic modeling, and now grading analysis. We also have construction products and services, including the construction management and monitoring software that we call Construct. For the physical world, we've built a construction automation solution called TerraFab. We basically bring a mobile factory to your project site, complete with an assembly line and rovers to automate the module to torque tube to pile assembly. We've completed our first beta deployment of TerraFab last year, and the first full deployment is underway as we speak. On the right-hand side, we have our plant controls team that provides a full set of SCADA and power plant control services, including hybrid control systems. And so now that you know who we are, let's discuss the agenda. We're going to begin with a recap of the webinar that we did back on August 30th. That webinar was intended to introduce our approach for doing earthwork assessments. We did give a sneak peek of Terrain Pro during that webinar, but that webinar was more about the process than the tool. This webinar, on the other hand, is going to be primarily about the Terrain Pro software. So we'll show you how to navigate and find Terrain Pro within the PlantPredict toolset. Then we'll give you a detailed demonstration of the software, which we anticipate taking about 20 minutes. We'll then review the key takeaways and discuss our updated pricing that we plan to roll out at the beginning of 2024. And then finally, we'll wrap up with some Q&A. So before we begin, let's start with our first poll question. All right, how much is a terrain following tracker worth from an earthwork savings perspective? Are you thinking 2 cents per watt, 1 cent per watt, or 0 to 1 cent per watt? And you can see we put some cubic yards per megawatt numbers to go along with that to try to help guide this. So I see we have the poll questions coming in. Go ahead and please make sure to participate and put your thoughts in here. It looks like Most people are thinking 1 to 2 cents, which is good. So we'll close the poll here in a moment. All right, there we are. So 53% of you say 1 cent to 2 cent, and then 40% say more than 2 cents. The key there is we're definitely thinking it's a 1 to 2 to plus cents opportunity here. All right, so very good. All right, now I'm going to hand it over to Jason, and I'll be back in a few minutes when he's done to talk about pricing. So go ahead, Jason.
All right, thanks, David. Appreciate it. So I've got a couple of slides, 3 slides to be exact, that we've recycled from our previous webinar, and I just wanted to kind of go through them and hit some of the highlights. So terrain, or the geometry of the site surface, is an important consideration that can influence a number of key project decisions, including those on the left-hand side of the slide. So that includes site selection, buildable area, racking selection, and foundation design, to name a few. In order to test different combinations of these options, we often have to iterate over different design scenarios, which may influence the amount of earthwork that's needed. And if we're not factoring this into our analysis, then we're missing a piece that could impact the results by easily a few cents per watt. So today we're providing a more in-depth demonstration of Terrain Pro as our solution to closing that loop on the Earthwork challenge and allowing for a faster iteration over Earthwork scenarios much earlier in the project lifecycle. We've also mentioned during our past webinar, PlantPredict 3D. This is our next generation of PlantPredict capable of modeling the performance of complex 3D racking geometries. We believe to accurately model the performance of a 3D structure, we must first accurately model the terrain under that structure, and not just the original surface, but the finished surface. And that's where Terrain Pro comes in. David will be providing more information about PlantPredict 3D at the end of this webinar, so stay tuned. Okay. My colleague Dylan covered this diagram as well as some others in great detail during our last webinar, but I wanted to hit some of the key terminology here because we're going to be talking about many of these in the demo itself. So the dashed line on this diagram is the original grade. The solid line, solid black line, is the finished grade. And the difference between these two is the earthwork. So what's shown in blue is our fill, and what's shown in yellow is our cut. We're also showing a pile, which we're saying is synonymous with a pier. This is the vertical structural support for the racking table. We have the pile reveal, or the pier reveal. And this is the height between the finished grade and the bottom of the table. And this height can vary by the pier reveal window, which is the dimension between the dashed green lines on this diagram. And as pier reveal increases, the required volume of earthwork will decrease. And of course, this can actually increase the amount of steel because we would be getting longer piles. We've also got the maximum north-south slope, or the maximum torque tube slope, and this is the angle between the any particular torque tube bay and the horizontal line. And we're also showing the articulation limit, or as it's labeled in our software, the maximum torque tube slope change. And this is the maximum allowable change in slope between two adjacent bays. And this is often set by the racking manufacturer. And so the pile reveal, the pier reveal window, the articulation limit, and the maximum north-south slope are 4 parameters that we'll be touching on again as part of the demo, because these are the variables that we can manipulate directly in the Terrain Pro software. Okay. And finally, I'd like to clarify the scope of Terrain Pro. It provides the grading analysis and earthwork quantities for the array area based on racking requirements. It does not provide earthwork estimates associated with roads, equipment pads, or drainage features. If we look at the overall areas covered by these different types of facilities, it's easy to appreciate that the array racking covers the vast majority of the site's area. And therefore, understanding the grading associated with the array racking is a major piece of the puzzle, and also one that can be quite time-consuming to analyze with traditional tools. So this is really the role of Terrain Pro. Okay. And with that, we're going to pull up our second poll question. Who performs the first earthwork assessment on your projects? Developers, internal engineers, developers, consultant, tracker supplier, EPCs, internal engineers, or engineer of record. And we'll give that a minute or two to you guys to respond. Right, so results are coming in, and it looks like a nice majority, 43%, are seeing that the developers' internal engineers are doing that initial earthwork assessment, followed by 27% developers consultant, and then also EPC internal engineers are also up there at 21%. So thanks for that. Okay. So I've got one more slide before we actually hop into the software demo. And I just wanted to point out graphically how we navigate to Terrain Pro, because it may not be super intuitive. So you may have expected to see a link to Terrain Pro next to the links by the other Pro tools within PlantPredict. But we actually provided the link to Terrain Pro within the analysis pane or the results pane of Design Pro. And that's because each Design Pro scenario as part of a simulation includes a corresponding Terrain Pro simulation. And so if you want to get to that particular Terrain Pro simulation, we navigate to it from Design Pro from the results pane. So we're going to see that in more detail as we get into the demo, but I just wanted to point this out graphically just so it sort of made sense intuitively. Okay, so with that, we're sort of going to hop out of the slide deck and we're going to hop into the live demo. So let me close out of that, and I am going to start the demo in PlantPredict. So from within PlantPredict, I'm going to navigate to Design Pro. So I'll pull that up, and that is going to pull up my my main projects page within Design Pro. And for the demo, I want to use a project called Antioch 1. So I'm going to search for Antioch 1. And this was a project that was created by my colleague, David. And it was created on August 3rd, and it's in Antioch, California. So let's open that up. Okay. So right now I'm in the Design Pro interface. And the first thing that I can see is that my colleague David had run two simulations, a simulation 1 and a C1 simulation 1. And both of those simulations were run back on August 3rd, 2023. And the first thing that I want to point out is that, Terrain Pro was released on October 1st. So any simulations run prior to October 1st are going to be missing the grading analysis. So we're not overriding any of the results from previous analysis. Even though Terrain Pro was released, and even though you'll see a link to Terrain Pro from the results pane, none of the actual results have been modified. And actually, you can't overwrite any of the existing results. So at this point, what I want to do, if I want to pull in the grading into this analysis, I need to actually clone and rerun the simulation. So that's what I'm going to do. And so here I can literally just click through to rerun the simulation. And to simplify the analysis, I'm actually going to reduce the number of scenarios. David had run 3 different scenarios at 3 different GCRs, and I'm just going to run just the 0.3 GCR just to speed things up. And another thing I want to point out is that as part of this demo, I want to run 2 different tracker scenarios. I want to run a standard tracker and I want to run a terrain following tracker. So I want to pay attention to my tracker costs. And if we pull up the pricing that was used previously, you'll notice that the racking material cost was auto-calculated. This is because we're auto-calculating the racking material costs at runtime based on the type of rack that was selected. I want to hard code this at 10 cents a watt. And I'm going to use 10 cents a watt for my racking material cost for my standard tracker, and I'll use 12 cents a watt for my terrain following tracker. So I'm going to use a 2 cent per watt price premium for my terrain following tracker. So I'll save that and I will submit it. And now basically what I'm doing is I'm rerunning this simulation that David had run previously. I'm only running the 0.3 GCR case, and I'm running it with a updated pricing for my standard tracker at 10 cents a watt. So this will take about a minute or 2 to complete. And while this is running, let's go back to the simulation that David had run. And I just want to point out the system size that David had run was 50.4 megawatts AC and 60.93 megawatts DC. So I would expect that same system size to come through in my new analysis, and that's exactly what I see. 50.4 megawatts AC and 60.93 megawatts DC, which is the same as what David had run. And so that now that the layout has finished, the grading is being run in Terrain Pro. I just see the result that came in here. So I have 310,000 bank cubic meters of earthwork that's been estimated by Terrain Pro. We're going to dive into that. Actually, I think while we're waiting on the results, this is a good opportunity to go ahead and jump over into Terrain Pro and do a deep dive of Terrain Pro, and then we'll come back and compare this against a terrain following tracker. So let's do that. So in order to launch Terrain Pro and see where this 310,000 bank cubic meters comes from, I'll click this icon and it'll bring me into the Terrain Pro interface. Okay, So at this point, my terrain analysis is loaded in Terrain Pro. I see that same 310,000 bank cubic meters, which was estimated in Design Pro or brought into Design Pro. And I can see that here in my earthwork volume totals. But I want to walk through the interface, and I'm going to do that from left to right so that I hit all of the features and all of the inputs and toggles. So on the left-hand side, upper left-hand side, I see my configurations. This says configuration 1. When I run a scenario in Design Pro, a corresponding simulation gets done in Terrain Pro for that earthwork model, and there's one configuration. If I click on my list of configurations, you'll see there's only one configuration here. And I can actually create additional configurations while I'm here in Terrain Pro and run alternate scenarios. Below my configuration selection, this is where I have my 4 main variables that I can manipulate. And we talked about these before. The minimum pile reveal, so I can add an additional parameter here if I'd like. And I also have a detailed definition of that minimum pile reveal here. Maximum torque tube axis slope, same thing. The reveal window, same thing, and maximum slope change or the articulation angle, same thing here. And we'll manipulate these and rerun alternate scenarios here in a minute. I can also change my units. So if I want to look at things in bank cubic yards, acres, and feet, as opposed to bank cubic meters, hectares, and meters, then I can do that here. I'm going to keep that on the bank cubic meters because that's what's reported in Design Pro. All right, so looking at the map interface itself, I can look at the data in a couple of different ways. So I have a couple of different views for that data. By default, the earthwork heat map is loaded, and I can see that I've got a range in colors from 7.9 meters of cut to 4.2 meters of fill. I can look at the original surface as a heat map. I can look at the finished surface as a heat map. And I can look at the individual piles themselves. And there's 2 ways to view the pile data. I can look at the pile data in terms of top of pile elevation. Actually, if I want to look at, I think there's a little hill up here, so this is a good contrast. This is at a higher elevation, so it's close to the 120 meter elevation, whereas the piles down here are a little bit lower in elevation. I can also look at the pile reveal itself. And what this data is showing is for every pile, it's showing the pile reveal. So the total dimension from grade to the bottom of the tracker table. And you'll see that this ranges from 2 meters to 2.3 meters. And this makes sense because my minimum pile reveal is set to 2 meters. And my reveal window is 300 millimeters. So it makes sense that the shortest piles that I have on site are 2 meters, and the longest piles that I have on site are 2.3 meters, which is the 2 meters plus the reveal window. I also have some other ways to view the data over here. So I can manipulate the base map, and I can change the base map opacity. I can turn on and off surface layers, so an original elevation and a finished elevation surface layer. This is an important one. This is the elevation source data. So we report the source of the elevation data right here for you. And in this case, this is a 1 meter resolution elevation source from the USGS, and it was updated in 2022. So no matter where you are in the world, we're pulling in publicly available topo data, and that is reported to you in Terrain Pro. I can also turn on the tracker projections. And what this is showing is it's showing the outline on the ground, actually, of each tracker. And so this is selectable. So I can select each tracker and get a profile view, which I'll talk about more in a second. I can turn on sort of I can sort of turn off the terrain view of the base map so that I can more clearly look at just the data. I can also take a screenshot directly from here, and this will download a PNG photo. And so this is handy to be able to drop into reports. And then, of course, resetting the compass and tilt and zooming in and out. Okay. Let's move over to the right. So this pane here is showing the sort of totals on the site. So I've got volumes, both broken out between cut and fill. And I've got my total disturbed area, which is super important for reporting from a permitting perspective, also broken out by cut and fill. And then I've also got my max cut and max fill depths here. Below this, I've got my tracker profile viewer. So I can expand this and I can search for any of the tracker. Our trackers are just named numerically 1 to however many trackers we have. For each pile, we provide the data associated with each pile in terms of the pile reveal, the pile ID, top of pile, bottom of pile, existing ground elevation, cut fill, etc. We can get a more accurate or a tabular form of that data here. And we can also take a snapshot as well for reports. And if I turn on the tracker projection again, I can go ahead and I can pick out any particular tracker that I'm interested in taking a look at to see its profile. Now, in this case, you'll notice that the tracker itself is a straight table, so there's no undulation, there's no articulation from bay to bay. So this is indicative of a standard tracker. In a minute, we're going to rerun this with a terrain following tracker. But the last thing I want to point out is the ability to download the raw data associated with this analysis. And this is downloadable in CSV format. And so in this raw data format, we can see that we have the pile ID, easting and northing coordinates for each pile, the existing grade, the finished grade elevation, the pile reveal, and the top of pile elevation. So this provides important raw data that can be imported into a CAD environment, for example, for creating a existing or finished grade surface. Okay. So at this point, we sort of walked through all of the major buttons and knobs within Terrain Pro. Let's go ahead and manipulate some of the variables and run some new analysis. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change my maximum slope change from 0 degrees to 0.75 degrees. And this is going to be indicative of a terrain following tracker. So let's apply that. And now you'll notice that when I applied that, it created a configuration 2. And that configuration 2 hasn't run yet, so I'm going to run it. And this is going to take about a minute or so to complete, maybe a little bit less. And it's the same configuration 1, except that I've allowed now an articulation, 0.75 degree articulation from bay to bay. And I'm going to turn on that Earthwork heat map and reorient the map. Okay, and so we see that there's quite a bit less earthwork, and we can see that also in the results. So we've gone from 310,000 to 110,000 bank cubic meters. I'm going to manipulate one more variable. I'm going to change the reveal window, and I'm going to change that to 400 millimeters. I'll apply it, and I will run that. Now, when I increase the reveal window from 300 millimeters to 400 millimeters, I'm going to expect a reduction in earthwork, because basically what I'm allowing is I'm allowing my pile height or my pile reveal to increase. So before, I was only my pile could only go from 2 meters to 2.3 meters. Now I'm allowing it to go from 2 meters to 2.4 meters. So I have a more degrees of freedom with my pile height. And you'll notice when we look at the pile reveal legend, you'll see that from 2 meters to 2.4 meters. And again, we do have a slight reduction in earthwork. So we've gone from 110,000 bank cubic meters to 99,000. Okay. So that sort of concludes the demo in Terrain Pro, but I want to go back to Design Pro. Let's say that I've run this analysis in Terrain Pro. I'm happy with this configuration, and now I want to go back to Design Pro, and I want to see how this configuration stacks up against the configuration that I ran previously. So let's go back into Design Pro. And we see that the analysis that we ran previously has completed. And I've got an EPC cost and I've got an LCOE number. I'm going to want to compare this against basically the same design, but with a terrain following tracker. So the way that we're going to do that is I'm going to create another clone. And now when I get to the equipment selection, I'm actually going to edit the racking so that I can specify that terrain following tracker. So those 4 variables that we've been talking about are now here in the tracker definition. So minimum pile reveal, maximum torque tube axis slope, reveal window, and maximum slope change. So I'm going to change these to match what I had in Terrain Pro. And I'll click next. Next, again, I'm going to take away the other cases and I'll just have the 0.3 GCR. I'll click next. And then again, in the EPC cost, come on, reset, there we go. I am going to enter the 12 cents per watt for this particular tracker. While we're here, I do want to point out that we've added two new parameters to the cost menu. So we now have a cut and fill cost. The default is $6 per bank cubic meter, and the steel cost is $1 per pound. So we're because we are calculating the pure reveal, we're using this in our steel calculation for cost. And I didn't point it out, but there's also a new user entry field in the racking definition, which is the embedment depth. So we're not doing the structural analysis of the piles. We're allowing the user to specify that embedment depth. So these things are combined in order to calculate an estimated steel cost. Okay, so I am going to submit that, and we're going to give this a minute to run, and I should be able to compare my results from an economic perspective between the two cases that I've run, a standard tracker versus a terrain following tracker. And while we've got a minute, maybe the last thing I want to point out is, a good way to think about Terrain Pro as it relates to Design Pro is it's sort of set up similar to how PlantPredict as a performance model is set up within Design Pro. So for every scenario that we run in the Design Pro environment, we're handing off certain information to PlantPredict to go and compute the performance of the system. And then that's coming back into Design Pro for use in the financial model. We're doing something very similar with Terrain Pro. We're handing off certain information about the layout to Terrain Pro. It's doing the earthwork calculations and sending that back into Design Pro. And then we're using that as part of our economic calculations. Okay. So at this point, I've got the same system size as I had before. I noticed that the total grading is at 99,000 bank cubic meters, and that should be exactly what I had before. So if we flip back over to Terrain Pro, 99,393. This is reporting 99,394. So this is basically the same value, which is what I would expect. And the performance model is running, and let's give that another few seconds to finish up. And then maybe while we're waiting for these results, let's just take a quick reminder of where we were from an EPC cost perspective and LCOE perspective. We were at 84.6 cents per watt EPC, or total EPC cost. This is a total all-in cost. And we were at 4.7 cents per kilowatt hour LCOE. So now it looks like we're finished up over here, and our EPC cost on our terrain following tracker is at 83.6 cents per watt and 4.69 cents per kilowatt hour LCOE. So we've got a small reduction in overall cost and a small reduction in LCOE, despite the price premium of 2 cents per watt on the terrain following tracker. So we've reduced our grading. We've probably slightly increased our pile cost, and we've increased the racking cost itself because of the 2 cent per watt premium. But despite all of that, our EPC cost has gone down by about 1 cent per watt. So, so this is a great example of a use case or workflow of how we can use Terrain Pro to make better informed decisions on some of the major decisions that go into project design in the early stages of development. All right, so let's hop back over to the presentation. I'll go into presentation mode and okay. Last slide that I'll speak to, and then I'll hand it back over to David. These are some key takeaways from today. So we navigate to Terrain Pro from the Design Pro results pane. All Design Pro simulations now include earthwork volumes from Terrain Pro and associated earthwork costs. Our default cost is $6 per bank cubic meter, but that can be overridden. Design Pro and Terrain Pro both include the same 4 configurable variables. So minimum pile reveal, maximum torque tube axis slope, reveal window, and maximum slope change or articulation angle. You can download raw pile and surface data, existing and finished, from Terrain Pro. And the pile cost in Design Pro is now calculated based on the total weight of steel. And this is a combination of the pile reveal, the pile type, which can also be set in Design Pro, and user specified embedment depth. Okay. And so that brings us to our third and final poll question. What would be the most valuable outcome of the earthwork analysis you saw today? So how do you think that this will best help yourself? Site selection, cost estimates, tracker selection, heat maps and disturbed area quantities for permitting, and finished grade elevations as input for drainage design. So we've got some good results coming in. And it's looking like almost 50% are suggesting that this can be helpful for cost estimates. Another 18% for site selection, another 17% for tracker selection, and then 10% and 10% for heat maps for permitting and finished grade elevations for drainage design. So it's good feedback. We appreciate it. Okay, and at this point, it's time for me to hand it back to David to start to talk about some of the PlantPredict pricing, upcoming pricing. David?
All right, thanks, Jason. Great demo. So that was really helpful. All right, on this slide, you can see our 5 pricing tiers, starting with our free basic plan on the left. Anyone can go to PlantPredict.com website and register for a free account and get some basic yet powerful tools that will let you get a taste of what PlantPredict can do. We then have the individual plan that gets you a single user license of our core PlantPredict tool for as little as $125 per month, or you can prepay and get an annual plan for $1,250, which means you get 2 months for free. If you have a small team, you can get our business plan, which includes some minor volume discounting. You get 3 user licenses for $300 a month or $3,000 per year, which saves you $750 when compared to our 3 individual licenses. As you can see on this table, we are not planning to change the pricing of our individual or business plans for 2024. However, you will not be able to use Terrain Pro with either of these subscriptions. That's the whole logic, is we're raising the price due to the fact that we've invested in Terrain Pro, but that is not available in the individual and business plans. All right, but if you like what you've seen today, so you're here, I'm hoping that you enjoyed what you saw from Jason, then you're going to want to go with the Pro plan. The PlantPredict Pro includes our core PlantPredict functionality plus all of our Pro tools. These include Design Pro, Terrain Pro, and Voltage Pro, which we didn't talk about today, but is also a very powerful tool within our Pro suite of tools. Our Pro plan is currently $6,000, and it includes 3 user licenses. Now on January 1st, we're going to be increasing the price of the Pro plan to $7,500. We'll also be increasing the price of our additional Pro user licenses from $2,000 per user per year to $2,500 per user per year. Please note, this price increase does not take effect until January 1st. So you have the remainder of this year to subscribe to PlantPredict Pro at the current pricing. If you want to lock in this pricing for a couple years, we do offer multi-year subscriptions as long as you are willing to prepay. You'll just need to make it clear that you want a multi-year subscription when you request a proposal. For our larger customers, we have our enterprise plan. We're keeping the base price of the enterprise plan the same. So you'll get 10 user licenses for $20,000. This will provide some volume discounting because 10 users at $2,500 per user would be $25,000. But we're throwing in 2 free user licenses if you go with the enterprise plan. Additional users will continue to be $2,500 per user per year, just like the Pro plan. Our enterprise customers get all the features of PlantPredict Pro, plus you get access to our SDK, which stands for Software Development Kit, and our API, which stands for Application Programming Interface, along with our highest support level for engineering support. The last thing that we want to share with you is that we will be releasing PlantPredict 3D in 2024. We don't have all the details of how we plan to sell PlantPredict 3D yet, but I do want to share with you that we are planning for PlantPredict 3D to be available to all of our paid subscription tiers. And we'll also be using a credit-based system, meaning that you'll purchase credits that you can then apply to your projects that will unlock unlimited 3D shade simulations for designs created within that project. We'll be granting free credits to all existing subscribers so that all of our paying customers will get a chance to try it once it's available. The amount of free credits that you will receive will be proportional to the level of subscription that you have. The end game that we've been working towards, and Jason, why don't you go to the next slide? The end game that we've been working towards over this past year is to combine our revolutionary grading analysis capabilities with best-in-class shade modeling. Using our cloud infrastructure, we have virtually unlimited computing resources at our fingertips, which allows us to do shade analysis for your entire utility scale site in a reasonable amount of time. This shade analysis can be done with sub-hourly time intervals. It can include bay-level shade factors, and it will support our advanced tracking algorithms or custom tracking angles imported via our time series functionality. So we've been hard at work focusing on getting the grading done right so that you can have the correct terrain-related geometries when you're doing your shading analysis. All of this is on the verge of coming together with Terrain Pro plus PlantPredict 3D. So it's going to be a very exciting year in 2024. All right, but we don't want you to hesitate. We want you to lock in the pricing of PlantPredict Pro from 2023. And so please, over the course of this next quarter, we want you to reach out to us, schedule demos. We can do personalized demos for you. We can give you free trials so that you can try Design Pro and Terrain Pro for yourself, and then request a quote. We'll get you signed up for PlantPredict Pro at current pricing. All right. With all that being said, it is time to transition into our Q&A. So, all right, let's start off with a question that we kind of anticipated and we knew it was going to be there, and sure enough, it has shown up in our list. So Jason, is it possible to upload maybe like a LiDAR topography data that we've collected for our site? Why don't you address that?
Yeah, sure. Thanks. Good question. I think there's probably several questions associated with that today. So in the Terrain Pro tool, the simple answer is no. We're pulling, we've got quite a few publicly available sources where we're pulling topographical data in from. And we, as of today, in Terrain Pro, it is not possible to upload your own data. We can upload our own data as part of a consulting service. So we do We do open up the possibility to running Terrain Pro internally with as part of a consulting service, and we do that from time to time. But in terms of being able to do that in Terrain Pro today, no, we do have that as part of a roadmap long term. So stay tuned, because I think that will be coming later. But yeah, I'll leave it at that, David.
All right, great. I think that you've covered this a few times, but the question did come in. Can you once again just define articulation limit?
Sure. So the articulation limit is really the maximum change in angle from bay to bay. So if we consider a typical terrain following tracker, if there is such a thing as a typical terrain following tracker, you'll have, between piles, there will be changes in, the articulation changes typically on the order of about a degree, or some trackers can go several degrees or even higher in terms of change in angle from bay to bay. But that's how it's defined. I hope that helps.
Okay, great. If I have my own layout, is it possible to import that layout in and run a Terrain Pro analysis on that?
No, it is not possible today. So today the layout is done automatically as part of the Design Pro layout, and that is the layout that's used for the Terrain Pro analysis. I guess one point that I want to make is that we see in all of our Design Pro, Terrain Pro tool, really, we see the analysis as a means to an end. It's we do the layout automation, and we do the terrain analysis automation as sort of a means to an end. It's a means to better understanding the economics of the project with certain types of equipment selections and preferences, right? I think once we were to transition from that being a means to an end to understanding the project economically to actually doing more of the, if the end itself is the design, then that becomes sort of the next tier of product where we're selling the design itself, and that I think that would command a higher price point. So we're looking into moving in that direction, but today, really Design Pro and Terrain Pro, the design portion of that is a means to an end, which is really being able to compare these different scenarios against each other to make decisions. Okay.
All right, really good. Okay, so this is a good question. In one of the examples, and we could even look at the examples that we have on this screen here. So like if we look at configuration 3, we've got a cut of 82,000 bank cubic meters and a fill of 90,000 bank cubic meters. So that's going to result in the need to do more fill than we have cut. So the net volume there is 7,670 bank cubic meters. Is there a way that I can balance that?
Today in the software, it's really not solving for a balance of cut and fill. That is often an objective of civil design, is to not have a net import or export of cut or of earth on the site. We're reporting out basically the minimum required earthwork to meet the racking constraints, but we're not going that extra step of balancing that cut and fill. But yes, the question is a good question, but it's not something that the Terrain Pro software is doing. And one other thing I did want to mention, I failed to mention within the webinar, is that we really focused on trackers today, but obviously Terrain Pro also works with fixed tilt systems, and I just wanted to make that known as well.
That question did come in. So you just addressed it.
Great.
All right. So does this software take into account different tracker suppliers, or like how would I specify different tracker suppliers when I'm using Terrain Pro or Design Pro?
Yeah, great question. So, tracker suppliers typically will supply their articulation limits, articulation angle limits, and maximum torque tube axis slopes. So those are two key parameters that would come from the tracker supplier. We don't have like a library of supplier-specific data in Design Pro, but you can get that information often from the data sheet of the tracker supplier.
All right. Is it possible to control two directions for the slope? So like if I wanted to specify north-south slope and east-west, how would we handle something like that?
It's not possible to do that today. So today it's really just we're controlling we're solving for grading associated with a maximum slope limit along the racking axis. We've done some studies on our own, and usually we've found that the slope limits in sort of a normal or a perpendicular direction to the racking axis is less of a constraint from a grading perspective. And so we have not built that in to the software. I think eventually we will, because especially for gang trackers, for example, needing to bring in that additional parameter is a factor, is an additional constraint. But I would say that's often a secondary constraint, and we have not built that in the current version of Terrain Pro. So hopefully that answers the question.
All right, great. We're going to go with one last question. So Jason, based on your experience, what would you say is the scope of this software? Like when we think of pre-engineering or executive engineering, how would you define the scope? Like how far should we use this into the design process?
Well, again, I think it's a means to an end is the best way that I would describe it. You're not going to use the grading design directly out of this because, like others have asked the question, you're not uploading your specific layout, and you're not uploading your specific site terrain, right? We're using publicly available terrain data, and we're using an automated layout. So the analysis is to be used in comparing alternate configurations. So different types of trackers, maybe different sites, different, like, should I build here versus should I not build here? These types of decisions, which are generally earlier stage decisions, this is where the software is really meant to provide a lot of power to oftentimes the developer, but sometimes as well, engineering firms and EPCs who are in that earlier sort of pre-30% design stage. I think this is where the software is really helpful. When you're trying to actually get a actionable design to go start to build off of, this is not the role of Terrain Pro. So hopefully that's clear.
Yeah, that's great, Jason. And I just want to add in, the term that we use, or the phrase we use quite a bit when we talk about Terrain Pro, is you should be doing earthwork assessments early and often on your projects. And I think that's really important. With our licensing model that we do, you can run as many projects as you want. You can do as large a projects as you want. And you can be starting thinking about your earthwork requirements right from the very beginning when you're doing site selection. So that's a really important part, and we offer this at a reasonably low price, $6,000 a year, and you can run earthwork assessments on your entire project. Most projects, just to get one earthwork assessment done, is going to cost you more than that. So you can do this on all your projects, your entire portfolio, in a matter of like a few hours. So you can do it early, often, and very quickly. And so I think that's an important thing. No, so we have way more questions than we have time to answer. We're going to review these after this call, and we'll be sending out answers to all of you who've asked these questions. As always, this will be available for download, or I shouldn't say download. You should be able to watch this at your own convenience. After this, we'll be sending out a link with the recording, so you can look forward to that. And please stop by our website. So our product website is www.plantpredict.com. From there, you can book a demo session with me or my colleague Benj, and we'll get on a call and walk through a project with you and go through how to use this. We also definitely recommend register for a free account. You can go to the website, click the orange button in the upper right-hand corner, and register for a free account. And then request a free trial. We'll give you a free trial that'll give you access to PlantPredict Pro for a set period of time, and so you can try it out on your own. We really think this is powerful technology. It's going to help the industry. We want to get it out there. We want it to be used. We want you to take advantage of it. All right. So we have more webinars planned in the coming months, so stay tuned to our LinkedIn page where we'll be announcing that. We'll also probably be sending you emails to let you know when the next webinar is. Look forward to PlantPredict 3D. That's a big deal we have planned on our roadmap for next year. And we hope that you got a lot out of this webinar. And thank you for, we had lots of people participate, and I'm really grateful for all of that. All right, with that, we'll be signing off. Thank you. Talk to you later.
Thank you.